Good afternoon. This is Scott Churchson from the Sports Den, and welcome to Spanglish Sports World on Zingo TV, channel 249, 250, and 251. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app on the app stores of iOS and Android. When you download, kindly make sure to rate, leave a comment. Both apps are free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV Sticks, Roku, Roku Sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Get it today. Hope you guys are doing well out there. Like I said, this is the Sports Den alongside me, Mr. Obi Spencer, and also Mr. JD Walker. We are going to be covering a lot when it comes to Formula One today. Welcoming in the stage once again is our European aficionado on all things Formula One, Mr. Lawrence Massico X Simpson. How you doing over there, sir?
Hi, doing all right, thanks. Just cursing the people over at Logitech because my camera decided today was the day to suddenly not work.
When I was in the IT field, we'd refer to that as a feature. Usually at the time you needed the absolute least.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's what it was. Yeah. Oh, okay. Now that makes sense.
Have you shut it off and turned it back on again?
Yes, or whatever lower level support level complaints they give.
I had that from my wife going like, "Have you turned it off and on again?" I'm like, "Yes, I have." It's like,
I was gonna say this is not an episode of the IT crowd here. But, yeah, we got a bunch of stuff we're going to be covering today. Like I said, we're going to be doing a bit of a deep dive into Formula One. Austria was more interesting, not based on the race itself, but some of the other issues that had happened. So we got some video on that. We also did have the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, which I want to maybe do a little bit of a conversation on. Have the obscure sport of the week, which will be tying to food as well. As always, you can find this show on Spanglish Sports World, Spanglish World Sports Den on Instagram and on Facebook, and SSW Sports Den on Twitter. So let's start this off. Like I said, Austrian Grand Prix, Verstappen won again, Red Bull won again. You know, this is something where they're starting to run away with it a little bit. And Lawrence, when you were here about 3 months ago, I don't know if any of us expected it to be, at least so far, more or less one-sided. Any thoughts?
Really, this doesn't wholly surprise me. It feels like this was a trend that was starting at the end of last season in Abu Dhabi. So at that one, Max Verstappen was pretty much really in charge of actually getting the win there, and the momentum's just sort of stayed because lately the trend has been like Red Bull would start off the season way behind Mercedes, but in terms of developing their car, they would then catch up and then be right on top of them by the end of the season. But usually on the cycle, it repeats itself. But since many of the rules and things carried over to this year too, Red Bull still has that advantage and been able to capitalize on it ever since then. And ultimately, they've been able to actually do more development. On the mental level, they got the edge over Mercedes, who are floundering a little bit. And just there's a lot of good news for Red Bull. And Hamilton now, for the first time in probably since Vettel in 2018, has a genuine rival and is making mistakes. And also, Mercedes have to be a bit careful because here comes McLaren. Yeah, McLaren aren't that far away. Because once you get Daniel Ricciardo going, McLaren could really be giving Mercedes a bit of a spook for second.
Yeah. It almost seems like Mercedes has almost fallen into some complacency because they were on top for so long, and now Red Bull and McLaren have caught up to them and surpassed them.
Yeah, I mean, this last week, right, McLaren was talking about just trying to finish ahead of Ferrari, and now they may be trying to get a full second place altogether. I mean, I think this week in terms of that was a big change.
Yes, no, definitely. I feel like with really the whole thing with Red Bull is that they have everything going for them. They've managed to secure their own engine, in theory, evolved from Honda for the next few years. So they got that. They're poaching Mercedes personnel. And there's just all these new regulations coming in for next year. So nobody really knows about who is going to be on top, really. For all we know, Haas could end up being the fastest car. I mean, come on. I mean, and who knows, eventually, I mean, I was watching the Formula 3 as well. We could have 2 Schumachers back on the grid. Because Ralph's boy David did manage to get his first win in Formula 3. So we can have Mick and David as well. And there are just so many unknowns going into next year. It's bonkers, really. But I'm glad to see that this year, the last year of turbo hybrid era, is actually going to be, it's going to go out with a bang.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, not a Honda engine.
Well, in this case, like I said, Red Bull has won the last 5. Verstappen has won 4 of the last 5, and obviously Perez basically picked him up on that I believe it was Azerbaijan. But it's curious to see that after winning, 3 out of the first 4, Mercedes is now playing catch up. Now you mentioned something about, all 3 of you mentioned something about playing behind the 8 ball. Do you think this is something that Lewis Hamilton isn't used to, and as a result, he's overcompensating out of maybe, I'm not going to say a panic mode, but when you're so used to being at the top of your game that you've never had adversity, do you think that's causing some of the issues he's been having lately?
I think just in general, we see this in sport after sport after sport. Mm-hmm. When somebody is dominant, they get into that mentality and they play from that or compete from that position of power. When something else happens that affects that, it's, that's always an interesting story. Can they recover? It feels like just the way that Red Bull was flying on the straights this weekend, that it's not, Hamilton's made some mistakes, but at this point it looks like the car. It just, it took forever to pass Norris. And it was, at that point, it was already over. I mean, he couldn't gain on the straights at all of that. So I don't know how much it's in his head, but that is a constant repetitive story in many sports, that one player has circumstances change, and can they change their mentality to compete from behind?
Mm-hmm. So,
yes,
John, anything?
Definitely.
Yeah. Anything, John?
Verstappen is almost has really come onto the scene, and he just ran a clinic at Austria. Led wire to wire practically. 3rd win in a row, 4th in the last 5. Now a 32-point lead over Hamilton for the cup chase for the year. And all of the drama in this race was over the shenanigans going on behind him. Like, it was never really in doubt, this week at all.
Which we're going to get into some of those shenanigans in a second. So, Rebecca, if you could do me a solid, pull up the Formula 1 video that we had. We had a little bit of an issue going on with Verstappen's teammate Perez, Leclerc as well. So I want to be able to pull that up, because in this case here, being pushed off the track not once. We could just talk. There's no audio at the very end of it. So can we get that? There we go. So. See that? Pushed him off the track. And Leclerc was pissed about the whole thing. They seemed to kind of work their way through it. My concern in this case here is it going to hurt Perez's reputation a little bit.
Loses ground by heading into the gravel. Hold on, this guy's
So that, by the way, came from the Formula 1 YouTube channel itself. So credit all to ESPN and Formula 1. But they left that in there. They put that over the top of the screen. So you know what? I figured I'd leave the image in there, or the audio in there. But things got a little testy. Things got a little dicey. Perez has apologized profusely for what happened. But give me your thoughts, all 3 of you guys. Lawrence, we'll start with you, I guess.
Honestly, I think Checo is doing what Red Bull basically want to do, because the main issues that led to Gasly and now Albon falling out of favor with Dr. Marco and Christian Horner is because they didn't give things a go. They basically, Red Bull don't care if you go for an overtake and you crash out and you go out in a spectacular fireball. You gave it a go. You gave it a go. Hard racing. They have it. And Checo seemed like he had a car that was capable of doing that. And he was very desperate. He was very scruffy, but he tried. He was doing hard racing. And this is a very big concern. Like with Michael Massey, who is now the leading the director of Formula 1, like after the late Charlie Whiting, there have been a lot of penalties because if you've not been aware, Lando Norris is only 2 points away from getting a ban. And you think, why? Lando's not a bad driver. I mean, Mr. Marzipan's a bit of a bad driver, but that's besides the point. But you just feel like, well, this is a bit weird, but it's just all these little infractions. But yeah, Perez, he gave it a go, and I don't think Red Bull are going to tell him off for that. But it's a little bit much for it to happen twice. And admittedly, Leclerc was trying to overtake into turn 7 and 8. Those, you can't really overtake there. Those cars are too big. Hopefully next year's cars, they are about maybe a third smaller than the current cars. You might be able to squeak in there, but this year,
And I think in terms of the number of violations, earlier in the race, Norris, as you said, he got pegged for one that seemed less harsh. Like he did less and got the 5 seconds. So they kind of set the stage early in that race to continue with the ticky-tack penalties, as we like to call them over here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was ridiculous. It just makes you think. If you looked at that 5 second time penalty, had he not got that, he might have been closer to Bottas and he might have got second. Or if he got third, it would have been in in a proper battle.
That 5 seconds was a difference since he was only 3 seconds behind Bottas in the finish.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That made a difference.
We've had DRS opportunities. Yeah, a whole lot of options that 5 seconds cost Norris.
I mean, clearly the Red Bull ring is very much Lando's track. He is a demon there. But I think one thing that we have to pay attention to as well is that we got to look at both the Spaniards. We got to look at both the Spaniards here. Carlos Sainz finishing again ahead of Leclerc and getting some good points for Ferrari, acting as a good wingman for Leclerc, and Fernando Alonso. I mean, it was unfortunate with all the spacing errors in qualifying. That Alpine in his hands, he could have easily been in Q3 and probably 8th place and scored maybe some good points. But the fact that he was able to pull that car from 14th place to 10th, that is really good. And he's only got a 2-year contract, whereas Ocon, who is now in until 2023, I believe, he's nowhere at all. Just all these different little mini stories behind Max Verstappen, really compelling.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I think it's as I've decided to delve into F1 this year, that is one of the great things about it. It's not just watch Verstappen and Hamilton go at each other, which is fun to do, but all of the other little things I'm learning and understanding about the sport that build a very robust story. And of course, as an American, I've decided to root for Haas, although that's not getting me anywhere, but we can try.
Well, Mick did get into Q2, to be fair, even though he crashed out in France. But to be fair, that was unfortunate. But, you got a good egg in Mick Schumacher, to be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, has there ever been this many penalties in one race? It seemed like it was almost 4 races worth of penalties just in one race. Handing them out like Oprah. You get 5 seconds. You get 5 seconds.
Yeah, no, the memes have done exactly just that, JD. I mean, the Oprah meme was very much on point with this one. I mean, I think there were 11 drivers called to the stewards at the end of the race for something or another, like half the grid, and so.
Are there team fines attached with those penalties as well? Like, does Red Bull get a financial fine or anything?
No, usually the financial fines usually for like pit lane speeding, and that's usually maybe like a few €100 here, a few €100 there. It's not usually like a huge one unless it's like an egregious error or something like that.
To them, it probably doesn't even count as money.
I mean, it's just enough to like go naughty.
Make it official.
Yeah, because There was one clip I saw where I forget which lap it was, but it was around the middle of the race where Alonso was in 6th at the time, and he was clearly about to make a run for it to try and get up to the 3rd spot, and then a driver was misread by his crew, misread the turn for him to jump out, and there was a close call where he almost ran Alonso off the road. And that could have been very scary. There, for something, for some kind of, even though you heard from the on the audio from the pit that it was just, one spotter said wait and another said go.
Yes.
So for things like that, are there usually, I guess the equivalent of, for an American sports, technical fouls, in the NBA? Are there other penalties attached to that, or they'll go back and fine him for safety violations for that later?
Well, that was actually during qualifying. So essentially, Alonso was on for a good lap and he was doing very well. But unfortunately, the spacing issues is that in turns 9 and 10, it's a very short track. It's like the shortest track outside of Monaco going. And it's only up until now that you just see all these cars like slowing down to like having a little bit of a traffic jam. But they made rules earlier in the weekend to stop that. But basically, Vettel, who was in the Aston Martin car, was slowing just to get ready to go for his lap, and he got told Alonso 2 seconds, and unfortunately it wasn't clear enough, so Vettel was ending up in the middle of the road, and Alonso basically had his lap ruined, so he didn't have enough time to go and do another one, so he lost out in going into the final part of qualifying. And Vettel did get a penalty, but it was mainly like he did apologize with Alonso in the end, but it was mainly his team not being clear enough. So he got a 3-place grid penalty for the race. So he qualified 8th on the day, but then he started in 11th. So you get usually a grid penalty for that kind of stuff.
Okay. So you're knocked down a few spots in qualifying for or an error in qualifying.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So I want to preview British Grand Prix because now it's coming to your home turf in a couple of weeks. But before that, I'm not sure if you guys were aware of this. Lawrence, I'm sure you probably knew. But because of COVID, Australia has been canceled.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're still running into problems. Obviously, it's a very, very segregated area over there. It is, in essence, just one very large island. So, you just sink or swim together in this particular regard. But it was a little surprising in some regard, and maybe because of the fact that here in the U.S., we're pretty far along in the vaccination process. I would have thought Australia would have been further along and they would have actually had it. So the fact that they canceled it surprised me at least a little bit, especially this far out.
I mean, actually, the Australian vaccine rate it's actually really far behind. It's only 7% of the population is fully vaccinated.
It's worse than Canada.
It's far worse. I mean, I think in the UK, we're about 2/3 of adults have been vaccinated. I mean, I've had my first one. I'm getting mine in about like 6 weeks' time, my second one. And my wife has been fully vaccinated too. So, everything's been really good going. But in Australia, there's been like a huge resistance to certain vaccines and stuff like that. And as a result, a lot of Australian cities have gone into lockdown. And New Zealand, who's been like the paragon of this whole pandemic, shout out to the New Zealand Prime Minister, they've just like cut off everything, and it's now to the point where it's a real shame due to the fact of all this backlash towards the vaccine. It's really unfortunate because this Albert Park, they've made some really big changes to the track this year. They smoothed a lot of corners out and widened some bits to include overtaking and encouraging it, because not only has there been no modification since its debut in 1996, that track has not been relaid since 1996 because it's a park. I mean, the clue is in the name, Albert Park, but it's a semi-permanent circuit. So there was a lot of things going into it, and it was really, really exciting to see what these changes would do. But alas, we're not going to get that until next March, if that even
then, yeah.
Even then, yeah.
I mean, it's like I said, it's a disappointment, but it is working its way back. I mean, obviously, like I said, Britton, you've got it into that 2 weeks' time. So I wanted to actually get your thoughts a little bit as far as what you think is going to go down with this. Is Verstappen going to win again? Can Hamilton rebound? Or is it possibly going to be someone else entirely?
And
we're not holding you to it officially.
No. Actually, I mean, the odds are in Verstappen's favor, but Mercedes are usually really, really quick. And what will help Hamilton out a lot, and maybe to a lesser extent Lando, is the home crowd, because at Silverstone, it's going to be a full house, full capacity, no restrictions at all. Because the day after the British Grand Prix, a lot of the COVID restrictions, like social distancing, compulsory mask wearing in places, will be lifted. But the day before, this is a test event to like show about like if you've got a negative test and you've been vaccinated, you can come in. So having the home crowd there in full will very much help Hamilton. I mean, it helped Max Verstappen with the orange army.
Absolutely, yeah. You saw the the orange crowd.
I mean, it was really funny in qualifying when Lando got P2. It's like, oh hey, the orange. Oh, they're not for Max, they're for me and McLaren. They had fun with it, and I know that Verstappen and Norris are very good friends. They race each other online for sim racing, so they know they're good friends. So I'm pretty sure that might have been really exciting for them both being on the front row. But I still think that it's really I don't really know. Verstappen is putting in a good, compelling lead. He's going to fight for it. Hamilton is now to the point where he goes, "Oh, I don't use the simulator." He went in the simulator for the first time in years, and that's telling. You have to extract everything out of that car, and yeah, I think we're going to get lots of more of those in-car shots of him just staring off into space, having qualified fourth and going, "I don't know what to do." So it's going to be close, but I think Verstappen might just pip it.
You still think he's going to take it, even though it's going to be, like you said, in front Hamilton's home turf?
Just about.
Nice. So, all right, refreshing in this case here. Like I said, this show is available across 35 different platforms, 4 different continents. Find us on Twitter at SSW Sports Den, and also on Spanglish World Sports Den on Facebook and Twitter. We're covering Formula One for right now. This is the Sports Den alongside Mr. Masago X, aka Lawrence Simpson, aficionado and knowledgeable on all things Formula One. In this particular case, before I go any further into any other subjects, any other thoughts, anything else that you guys wanted to dive into when it comes to Formula One? Anything you hadn't expressed yet or any questions you had?
My only question about this race upcoming is, being that it's got that extra week, they were saying in the telecast a little bit that maybe the car really hadn't had a time to fully be repaired for Mercedes, and this might give them that extra time, that extra week off, to really get the car back up to speed, as opposed to, repairing components, replacing components. Do you put anything into that at all? Anybody or is the car just the car and Hamilton's just where he's at?
Well, there is a budget cap this year, so resources will be very much limited, and I think there's only so much you can do to fix those types of things. I mean, in the French Grand Prix, and it was something really interesting, is that Bottas and Hamilton switched cars to show see, oh, is there something up with Bottas's car? That's why he's been so far behind. And initially, it proved, yeah, there is. There was a discrepancy about like half a second. So that put to bed some of the fears about Bottas's performance. But ultimately, there is only so much you can do with a chassis. A chassis is the things put together. And you can either get a really good chassis, or you can get one that's just not so great. And just when you put everything together, it's just luck of the draw. So hard to say, but I think the home advantage will definitely help Hamilton in this adventure.
And here
also,
in the States,
everybody else has the same 2-week break. And if there's a budget cap, it's not like Mercedes can just plow more money in to try and fix up the cars. It's kind of, everybody, it's a level playing field. It's kind of everybody has that advantage. I mean, it gives everybody the extra rest. But the home advantage should at least make it, if Hamilton doesn't win, he'll at least keep it close with Verstappen.
Not to mention the fact that half the teams are located within 10 miles of Silverstone. So They basically, in fact, and Aston Martin, their base is literally on the site of Silverstone, so they can just get the trucks out of the depot, and there you go, they're right there.
All down the hill, and there you are. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, we over here don't get a home turf until October. The one race that here in the U.S. actually we have, it doesn't actually show up until the fall. John, I know you and I were talking, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks ago, whatever it was, about the possibility of a second track being formed, actually, in this case, in New Jersey, in an area, right by the George Washington Bridge, right by New York City. This, I think, is time for the U.S. to finally get a second one. You are
actually getting one.
It's Miami, I believe.
Miami,
right?
That's right.
There is in Miami, and it's going to be on the site of the Miami Dolphins Stadium. So it's basically you're getting one in Austin and one in Miami.
That's right. I did forget about that. But
no,
in this case,
worries, but it's
I thought they were doing a road course. I didn't realize they were setting it up in the Dolphins Stadium.
Around the site. It's around the site, so it's around the stadium.
Yeah. I know they talked about it, like I said, right down the road from where we are in New Jersey, me and John. So that would have been really interesting. But the ratings now, it's funny, for 9 o'clock in the morning here, the ratings on ESPN are usually pulling about 900,000 viewers. So it's starting to get a little more credibility and a little more respect, maybe because it's a time slot that no other real sport is on at that time of the day, typically. But it's starting to get a little bit of credibility, and it might be something that NASCAR might have to be a little bit concerned by.
So I don't know how I failed to mention this to you yet, Scott, but I don't think I did. I went to the NASCAR race in Pocono 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's a different sport. So, I mean, it's as different from NASCAR to Formula One as any other sport. I mean, the teams don't work together the same way they do in NASCAR. They don't, compete in those sort of ways. The teams are bigger, however an owner owns however many he has. So I don't know if that's something NASCAR has to worry about. And also because it is a time difference. You can be fully invested in motorsports and watch Formula One and NASCAR because of that time difference. So I don't know that NASCAR is the sport or the thing that has to be worried about it.
Hardcore racing fans are watching all of them. Like I have a friend who's very much into racing, and she was posting all day about all the races she was watching. Where she started with Austria in the morning. Shout out to Donna and Keith for helping, and my partner Stephanie for helping me with because I'm not a big racing fan, but I've had a big crash course on this. So thank you for that. But the hardcore racing fans will watch all of it. I mean, how many are there really? That is a further discussion. But like Obi said, they're completely different sports, different strategies. I mean, yes, it's all racing. You have NASCAR, it's mostly oval tracks, but you have road courses with different turns in Formula One. So it's almost like saying, yes, people can watch, basketball versus baseball versus football, but they're different. Or the same way that college basketball and the NBA are different. They're the same sport, yes, but like the playing style is much different.
It'll be interesting to see. Yeah, please, Lawrence, go ahead.
Oh, well, there is actually a halfway house there. There is a series called IndyCar.
Yes.
So IndyCar is a mixture of the two. It's very much a pared down single-seater Formula One style event, and it's been around for decades. And a lot of the old F1 drivers do end up there. Like, for example, Kevin Magnussen's been in there. Romain Grosjean's currently racing in there and doing pretty well. Marcus Ericsson from a couple of years ago. And the Haas reserve driver, Pietro Fittipaldi, is in there as well. You do get a lot of drivers that used to be in Formula One move over to IndyCar and IMSA. But if you want like a combination of like, you get a lot of, and not to mention Indy 500. So that's it's a very nice little halfway house if you want to get into the single-seater car racing of Formula One, yet have the sort of like, kind of a bit more laid back and kind of down to earth, nitty gritty and more mechanical based, motorsport, like as in NASCAR.
Nice. So, Any other closing thoughts, gentlemen?
No, that was my last closing thought on this one.
Ruby. Actually, about 4:30. Not bad.
Yeah.
So, like I said, as always, this is the Sports Den, SSW Sports Den on Twitter, and also Spanglish Sports World Sports Den, and Facebook, and also Instagram as well. Alongside us is Mr. Lawrence Masako X Simpson, voice actor, audiobook actor as well, and a myriad of other things as well on top of that, and Formula One aficionado, like I mentioned. Wanted to pop over in this case here. We can always come back to Formula One as more questions pop up. But I wanted to cover a little bit when it came to the Nathan hot dog eating contest. In something that could only be described as very, very American, gluttony is part of our nature. So props to, once again, Joey Chestnut for once again making this all about him. Now, what's interesting is here, if you look at the video, I'm not sure getting an echo. I apologize. But this is the ESPN broadcast. I'm not editing this. They got into a lot of heat because of the fact that their live broadcast was this. And as it turns out, the match ended. The eating contest ended right on that image right there. And it was something that they took a lot of heat for because people want to see Joey Chestnut win. Thank you, Rebecca. We're good. And what's funny about it is everybody knew Joey Chestnut was going to win. It was a matter of really how. Now, my personal favorite Nathan hot dog eating guy is Matt Stoney, the one guy that actually beat him. But Joey Chestnut, how do you eat 76 hot dogs in one sitting?
Very quickly.
Oh, yeah. Besides that, yes. Go ahead.
It's equal parts fascinating and horrifying watching some of the methods with the dogs and the buns in the water which I'm surprised it's even legal to dunk the buns in the water because that breaks down the starch. So it's almost kind of like, I don't want to say, it's gamesmanship. If it's legal, it's not cheating, but it doesn't seem right to me. But if it works,
they're not saying no,
But I noticed the same thing about the ESPN stream because I checked out several different clips and I realized, oh no, this isn't just so and so's YouTube clip being bad. This is ESPN's issue.
So yeah, they took, like I said, go ahead, Obi, if you were going to say something.
I got two comments on this. So I don't know if you all know of Wing Bowl, but it is Philadelphia's answer to the hot dog eating contest, and many of the professionals do enter as well, although Joey does not come down to Wing Bowl. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to this sort of gluttony, disgustingness of it, and I've heard other commentators kind of go along with that this week, I then go, but is it any more disgusting that somebody's doing that to their body than what I was watching instead, which was the Tour de France, and guys riding bicycles 150 miles at 25 miles an hour for 22 days straight, and what that does to your body and how you have to train for it. And when I thought of it that way, it lost some of its disgustingness. Now, the hot dog eating contest is particularly disgusting because they stick the buns in the water, whereas the wing eating contest, there is no sort of cheat there. They have ways that they know to get the meat off quicker, but it's really that water dunk that makes that disgusting as opposed to just the gluttonous level of it. Well, my little thought process.
That is a good point, Obi. I hadn't really thought of that as far as comparing it to other sports. I mean, the most popular sport in America is watching 300-pound dudes smashing heads into each other for weeks and years on end, and then developing severe health problems later in life as a result of it.
But this is ironically going to tie in at least a little bit to the obscure sport. Rebecca, hold on that video for 1 sec before I go into it. I put a lot of time into this because I really, really wanted to find an obscure sport that was equal parts weird, but also related to food. Now, a couple of the runner-ups that I had included the bacon eating contest, 182 strips of bacon in 5 minutes. Props to Matt Stoney. We also had buffalo wings. We also had Carolina Reaper eating contest, and the one I was real close to doing. So give my wife credit on this one because she's the one that talked me out of it. A Rocky Mountain oyster eating contest.
Nice.
Now, for those that are outside the U.S. who may not know what a Rocky Mountain oyster is, it is a really, really nice, polite way of saying a bull testicle. So they have bull testicles. It is something that is an edible delicacy here in the United States under the name of Rocky Mountain oysters, because who wants to eat bull junk? I opted against all of that, but I still stayed in the food realm anyway. And we're going to kick this off now. Obscure Sport, Rebecca, if you can pull it up. We are doing mashed potato wrestling. It's very popular in Maine, South Dakota, Nebraska, and places like that. It's part of a massive event, two-day event they have, August 27th and 28th this year. You literally sitting there in a giant tub of mashed potato. And you just pin one another. Because America.
Oof.
You're allowed to do tag if you want to. There are winners on this whole thing. This is something that's been around since 1999. And as you can see, attracts a pretty good crowd, and also gets champions as well. And possibly Shaolin for that. Again, it is positively very American here because, again, it's the kind of stuff that we involve with food. But to be fair, those in the UK, you have bog snorkeling. So you have an event where you're going to literally swim in muddy bog water, with scuba gear. So anyway,
there's not to mention rolling cheese down a hill.
Yeah, but that doesn't make it dirty, though. I mean, cheese rolling is one of those most famous sports. I think we covered that in Obscure Sport way back in the beginning. Cheese rolling, though, is dangerous. I want to try it once. I just want to do it once. And I know you're allowed to, basically anybody's allowed to enter it. Also, because actually, giant cheese wheel would be really cool anyway. But yeah, this is a U.S. thing. So as usual, we usually break this down into 5 different categories: obscurity, watchability, stupidity, watchability, playability, and also I added an extra category starting off last week, badassery. So in this case, we're going to break down mashed potato wrestling. Obi, do you want to start it off?
My pleasure. So I did my scoring real quick here, as I do. Oddity, I'm only going to give this a D. Scott, I don't know, maybe you missed that day in high school, but we did the Jello wrestling. It's no different. It's just as dumb. It's the same kind of thing.
I almost actually had to wrestle John Malmeister, but they canceled the event. I would have lost badly. Yeah.
Lucky man. Lucky man. But I did go with so I gave it a D. But stupidity, as someone who did compete in it, the Jello wrestling, I'm going to give it a B. It's like almost impossible to do anything in that situation. And you're just falling over each other. And unless I suspect you are sort of like a pro, like a regular professional wrestler where you can do things, it's just a lot of falling on each other. But that's why it's A for playability. Because
they had a suplex in there, though. They did have a suplex, though. They had a suplex.
Yeah. I think there's a certain amount you have to let the guy grab you and pull you up and do those things. And playability today, I did it. It was hysterical. It was fun. Watchability. I mean, these are my friends who did the Jello wrestling. I'm just basing this all off of Jello wrestling, and it wasn't even watchable. And I knew everybody in the ring, let alone superstars or strangers. So watchability is solid F. Badassery, we're going to give it a C. There is some fun, and even if it is like professional wrestling, and you do let somebody suplex you into a small little vat of mashed potatoes, that's a little badass.
Nice. All right, oddity B- for me. I'm going to zip through mine real quick, and then Lawrence, it's up to you if you want to do this. Otherwise, I'll defer over to Johnny. Oddity B-. It's unique. It involves food, and honestly, I never considered mashed potatoes in that regard. Anyway, stupidity. You know what? I don't think it's that crazy. C-. People are having fun. They enjoy themselves on this kind of stuff. Clearly, the contestants are enjoying themselves as much as possible. Although you probably, like you said, can't get a good footing on this. Playability. I'm giving it an A-. Anybody can do it. All you need is a giant tub of a variety of mashed potatoes and just make a tub out of it and just go to town. Watchability, honestly, C-, maybe a D. I don't see it as something that I could have a lot of interest watching repeatedly. And as far as badassery goes, unfortunately, I got to keep it, probably a C-, D as well, because while it is wrestling, you're sliding around too much. You can't really get a lot of footing. The only thing you're really getting is dirty. So, Lawrence, any thoughts on this?
Well, probably in terms of like oddity, is certainly up there. I'd say like a B+, because it's like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, at least you're not feeling as disgusting. Rather than mud, it's potatoes. I mean, you can at least eat it at the end of the day if it was good enough. Stupidity, again, I'd say it's not stupid at all. People who clearly are entertained when they go and see it, they have a good time, and the wrestlers probably have a good time too. Again, it's probably nicer to be covered in potato rather than mud. Playability again. Again, I'll defer to you. I'd say like it's an A. So long as you got enough potato and you got a big enough place you can do it, you're good to go.
Perfect.
Watchability, I probably wouldn't watch it again after that. If I go one time, I'm thinking, okay, I've had my fill. I'm about as full and satisfied as the wrestling tub full of potatoes as well. Badassery, I give it like a B-, because it's like you gotta have conviction to be able to try and do wrestling in that kind of slippery environment. So you gotta have some kind of confidence and conviction to do that.
Nice. Johnny?
Go ahead.
I apologize, Johnny, because I did not get to put this on my lists and announce that part, and I apologize for interrupting. This actually made it to number 4 on festivals, the 4th best festival, pushing Ba off the list and knocking down bog snorkeling, surprisingly enough, right below cheese rolling. And I put it as number 5 best martial arts we've looked at, pushing slaps off the list.
What's your number one festival?
Calico Storico.
Oh yeah, fair. Okay. Yeah, that'll probably never get dethroned. Good point.
No.
Cool. All right, John, how about you, sir?
I would give it I need to catch up on all of the ones on Obi's list. I've only noticed these for the past few months, so
you're a recent addition to the host. Right
I kind of came late to this game here, but I would give it a B. I would give this a B- for oddity. Like Obi said, it's basically a ripoff of Jello wrestling, just or mud, just used mashed potatoes. I've known people that have done Jello wrestling for charity, so I would give it a A- for stupidity. It's good fun, but really, that's all it is. It's good fun, good fun. And it's an A- for playability because most people can do it. Depending on how, if you're willing to get dirty, you can do it. B- for watchability, because unless you know somebody doing it, like Lauren said, just watch once and I'm good. C+ for badassery because again, most people can do it.
Fair. Nice. All right, so we got about 10 minutes left. I want to run one more clip that I've got. I caught this the other day when I was covering MLS, since I normally do that. New England, which is in first place right now, just lost 2 points in the overall, because in MLS, let me get my brain back on track here for a second. 3 points for a win, 1 point for a tie. Rebecca, can you pull up that last video right now? First one is ESPN. The second part is actually my own phone from my own couch. This was the game-tying goal.
That is something.
New England, which is currently first place in the East, would have gotten 3 points had that defender's head not happened and bounced the ball into the net. As a result, the game ended up being a tie, and they only got 1 point out of it. So it was something I just happened to watch. We were going out someplace and I was just channel surfing and I had the game on and I'm like, I got to record this. And like I said, for somebody who normally covers MLS on a regular basis, NYCFC specifically, I've been watching a lot more soccer, especially with New England playing as well as they have. So it was a brutally bad tie to have, knowing that goal right there cost them 2 points. So anyway, that was that. I just felt like throwing that in there because why not? Okay, so we got about 8 or 9 minutes left. I wanted to basically give a little bit of a roundtable at this point. If there's any other thoughts, Lawrence, like I said, I want to cover you a little bit, how people can get in touch with you, but we're going to get to that in a minute or two. But any other final thoughts when it comes to Formula One, Nathan's, or wrestling with food?
I'm going to go off topic. I'm sorry.
That's right. You did have something you wanted to mention.
Well, I did, but before, I have a few things. So we usually do our shout-ups and shout-outs. I'm going to do my shout-out to the USAD, USADA, WADA, U.S. Track and Field. Chicago Richards was the number one thing I was looking forward to watching in sprinting this year. She found out her mother died. She either consumed or smoked some weed. And now she's suspended for 30 days, which actually isn't that big of a deal because she would be back in time for the Olympics, but they're not going to let her compete. They're going to say, oh, well, she lost her race, which doesn't matter because they can still say we're picking you anyway, and they're not doing it. And,
You're strictly to a rule.
Yes. So shut up. And then a shout out to the Mansk missile, Cavendish in cycling, who had not run a stage of the Tour de France since 2016. He's an old man in any sport by any standard, and yet he has run 3 stages already. One more stage, and he will tie Eddie Merckx for the most stage victories ever. And that number exists with or without erasing anything that Lance Armstrong did, and has a very good chance of setting a new record in that, which would just be fantastic, especially if he holds off and does it in Paris. So that's my shout out and shut up, which I just wanted to touch on since I prepped them so diligently.
Nice. I do actually want to go off a little bit of topic in this case too. I want to give a shout out. There was an 81-year-old woman who recently competed in a 5K Tough Mudder. Now, Tough Mudder is an obstacle course that goes 5K. That is very challenging for anyone because of the amount of rope climbing you got to do, wall climbing. It's something that the Tough Mudder is done by the Marines in the U.S., a lot of the military, a lot of professional athletes train by using the Tough Mudder. This 81-year-old woman competed in it recently. So you know what? I want to give a shout out because let's face it, I wouldn't be able to do it. There's no way in hell I can do it, but she did. So you know what? Respect. So
A+ for badassery for that.
Yes, thank you. Agreed. We should do a Tough Mudder at some point. Any other final thoughts before I start picking Lawrence for some questions?
No, let's give him his last 6-7 minutes of the show.
Yes, sir. So in your particular case, Mr. Simpson, thank you again for popping on. Like I said, your knowledge of Formula One is more than impressive, and it's probably a little bit of a change of pace for you to be able to talk about it. So glad if I can help that way. But in your particular case, you've moved into audiobooks, which I'm curious about a little bit. If you've done it, which ones you've done of late, voice work, and find out, frankly, what you've been up to lately and how people can get in touch with you.
Oh, well, cool. Well, thanks very much. Basically, you can get in touch with me on Twitter and on YouTube. It's MastercoX. So that's how the best ways to get in touch with me. But in terms of the audiobook, it's just I'm just wrapping up recording one right now. We're just going over the last bits of corrections and whatnot. And it's a really compelling story. It's a very long one. It's about like 300 pages or so. So it's quite a big one, about 135,000 words. My first ever one I've done. And it's been an adventure learning how to make one and how to actually do it ultimately. So it's been a ride. Hopefully the Kindle and hard copy are out right now. It's called the Marhanyana of Tumma. So it's very, very lengthy. It's very, very if you like Dragon Ball, you'll like this, I think.
Can you type in the chat when you're done?
Yes, I can. Just one moment. I am just going to get the name of the book. So it's I'll just get that in for you and I'll type it in the chat. So there.
Okay.
It's a Madhanyam. It's book one of 15, I believe.
Wow. Stay ahead.
So yeah, it's on Amazon.com right now as a Kindle. It's 99 cents. You can get paperback for $12.
Nice.
Yeah. So
I just changed. In this case, I didn't have a lower third, so in this case, at least I just changed my name to it. So if anybody wants to see it, it's a little. They should be able to pull that up. So.
Yes, exactly. So you can at least get the audiobook. The audiobook will be out soon, but this is at least the text version.
Nice. So what else do you have on the horizon? Anything you're allowed to talk about?
Other than that, really, just carrying on doing what I do on YouTube. So
yeah,
it's a very standard affair.
Yeah, every day you're coming out with a new video. I've been,
Well, I've got like 7 weeks,
you.
7 weeks worth of video in the can. So because
okay.
I want to like have a proper vacation. So I want to like have a I could take a few weeks off, and just relax for a while.
I understand. I'll be going to Maine in about a month and a half, and for my small little 2,000 subscriber YouTube channel, nothing compared to you. I know I've got to build up ahead of time, so at the very least, I'm editing while on vacation. But so basically, the video you came out with today, you did that one back in what, May then?
I can at least tell you when I recorded it. Let me just give you 1 second. I just have to find the file that it was.
I need to get better with that.
So when was the day that I exported it? I exported it on there we go. Yeah, 23rd of May.
Nice.
So I made that video on the 23rd of May. So it's about like 7 weeks.
Wow. All right. So good on you, man. You're way more prepared than I am. So
I've got a good formula and like workflow down. I edit, I write, I do pretty much everything.
I know the feeling, but good for you. So this is probably going. Any other closing thoughts? We're gonna have to wrap this up in a minute.
No, I think that's
NBA. Sorry.
Oh yeah. NBA finals in a minute.
NBA finals starting tonight.
So yeah, not the Knicks, not the Nets, not LA.
Yeah, but CP3 finally gets his shot. I think the irony, if that's the right word, of CP3 finally getting his shot the year everybody gets hurt and he doesn't. This is a guy who's been stopped many times for injury. And
he did miss a few games for COVID as well, for COVID protocols. And hopefully Giannis can make it back for the Bucks in this series.
In time, if you will.
But it's good just to see two different teams in there instead of LeBron and or the Warriors every single year. So you have one team, Milwaukee hasn't been to the finals since 1974, and won their single championship in 71, and Phoenix getting back for the first time since 93. So it's refreshing to although unfortunately it's come at the expense of seemingly half of the superstars in the league getting hurt along the way. It's at least something different,
Sure.
And I'm excited for it.
We should probably spend more time on that, so I'll blame myself for that one. But it's going to be a good series, regardless. We are going to have to wrap this up. Yep, I just got the notification for 1 minute there. But thank you. Thank you, Obi. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Lawrence, for being on. As always, you can find him at Masago X, really on any social media platform. As for us, one more time, this is available across 35 different platforms across 4 different continents. Antarctica, not one of them as yet. Find us one more time on Twitter at SSW Sports Den and Spanglish World Sports Den on Facebook and also on Instagram. For myself, for Mr. J.D. Walker, Mr. Obi Schottenfeld, and of course our special guest, aficionado on all things F1, Mr. Lawrence Masago X Simpson. This is Scott Churchson. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day, and together let's make it a great tomorrow. Be good. Ooh, nice.